The harmattan breeze drifted through Umuagu village, carrying the scent of dry dust and wood smoke. The sun had barely risen, yet the settlement was already alive. Women pounding yam, traders arranging their stalls, children chasing each other barefoot through narrow paths. At the far edge of the village, where farmland met forest, stood a crumbling mud hut with a patched zinc roof. That was where Amara and Nena lived, 19 years old, slender, chocolate-skinned, with soft eyes that held more dreams than her life had ever allowed. Her hair was woven in simple, neat lines. Her dress was a faded yellow gown she washed every evening to keep looking decent, even though poverty clung to it like a shadow. She stepped out of the hut that morning, carrying a bundle of firewood tied with old twine. Her bare feet were dusty, but she walked with quiet dignity. Amara had been orphaned since she was 9, left alone with no relatives willing to take her in. She survived by helping villagers with errands, yet they still treated her like an outsider. As she walked toward the market square, whispers followed her like an unwanted echo. "See her, the orphan girl," one woman muttered. "She has nobody." "Better be careful with her," another said sharply. Amara kept her head lowered. She had learned to swallow insults like dry gari, without water, without complaint. She simply delivered the firewood to Mama Nweki, collected her small payment of 30 naira, and continued with her morning tasks. But that day, the humiliation cut deeper. At the village market, she approached a fruit stall. She needed just 2 oranges, her only food for the entire day. She stretched out her coins, but the vendor, Madame Uzo, eyed her with disdain. "You again," the woman hissed. "I told you not to stand near my stall. You scare customers away." Amara blinked. "I only want to buy—" "Buy what?" Madame Uzo snapped. "You that cannot even afford slippers? Leave." Then, in front of everyone, she snatched the oranges from Amara's hand and slapped the coins back at her feet. A few villagers laughed under their breath. Amara's throat tightened. She bent to pick the coins quickly before they rolled into the dirt. She didn't cry, not here, not where the world enjoyed her pain like entertainment. She turned and walked away, heart pounding, heat swirling behind her eyes. As soon as she was far enough from the busy square, she broke into a run, past the huts, past the farmlands, straight toward the forest path where the world grew quiet. The trees offered her the privacy that humans never gave. She reached a fallen log and sat, breathing hard. Why is life like this for me? She wondered, hugging her knees. A rustle of wind moved through the leaves, as if the earth itself was listening. Amara often came here to escape. It was the only place she felt safe, the only place she could dream without interruption. From her spot, she could see the far distance, where the old Obiakar estate sat on a gentle hill, a large, silent mansion built decades ago, rarely used since the death of the owner's wife. Villagers said the family visited occasionally, but mostly the estate remained quiet, like an ancient king watching over the land. Amara gazed at it with quiet awe. She had always wondered what life inside such a place must feel like. Soft beds, warm water, people who treated you like you mattered. Sometimes she whispered, "One day, maybe life will be kinder." But reality always reminded her of who she was. A girl with nothing. A girl the village forgot. The sun climbed higher. Amara wiped her eyes, stood, and dusted her dress. She didn't know that fate had already begun shifting its pieces, and that her world would soon collide with the very mansion she admired from afar. She didn't know that the man who owned it, Kalu Obiakor, age 29, tall, caramel-skinned, impossibly wealthy, would change her life forever. And she especially didn't know that destiny had already decided. The girl who had nothing and the man who had everything were about to meet. The sun was already high over Enugu State, its brightness reflecting off the sleek body of a black luxury SUV as it sped down the quiet countryside road. Inside the car sat Kalu Obiakor, the 29-year-old billionaire whose name commanded respect from Lagos to Abuja. Tall, caramel-skinned with a finely shaped beard and eyes that held both intelligence and exhaustion. Kalu was the kind of man whose presence filled a room. Yet today, he looked nothing like the powerful CEO the world imagined. His navy blue casual shirt was unbuttoned at the top, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing a man desperate for air, desperate for space to breathe. For months, pressure had been choking him. Pressure from investors demanding more, board members questioning his every move, family members pushing expectations on him like weights tied to his ankles. And worst of all, the loneliness. Unlimited wealth meant nothing when every relationship around him felt shallow. When his late mother's estate manager called to say the Obiakor countryside mansion needed inspection, Kalu didn't hesitate. He needed an escape. He needed silence. He needed a place untouched by the noise of his life. "Sir, we will arrive in 10 minutes," the driver announced from the front seat. Kalu nodded slowly. "Good," he said, voice low. He looked through the window at the vast stretch of land, forests, farmlands, small clusters of houses. The countryside had always been his mother's favorite place, and even though he hadn't visited since her passing 4 years ago, the land still felt like her presence wrapped around him. A pang of grief pressed lightly on his chest. He exhaled deeply. "Maybe coming here was a good idea," he murmured. Behind him, in the second SUV, his 2 security escorts followed closely. Kalu didn't like traveling with too many people, but safety demanded it. Still, they kept distance. He wanted isolation, not noise. As they approached Umuagu village, Kalu caught sight of everyday life happening in slow, peaceful rhythms. Women carrying clay pots on their heads, teenagers harvesting cassava, children chasing chickens with dusty feet and loud laughter. He envied the simplicity. His gaze drifted farther, onto a stretch of forest, dense, quiet, untouched. Something about it felt calming, like the kind of place someone would go to hide from pain. He didn't know that a girl had just been crying there not long ago. A slight disturbance in the road snapped him from his thoughts. The SUV slowed as they approached a bend, revealing the familiar outline of his family's old estate, resting gracefully on a hill. The Obiakor mansion, cream walls glowing under the sun, pillars tall like sentinels guarding memories. The gates swung open as the convoy approached. Kalu stepped out once they parked in front of the mansion. His polished shoes touched the red earth, grounding him in a way he hadn't felt in months. The estate manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Abekwi, hurried forward. "Oga Kalu, welcome, sir. We've been expecting you." Kalu nodded, offering a small smile. "Thank you, I just needed to clear my head." "I understand, sir," Mr. Abekwi said softly. "Madam used to come here whenever Lagos overwhelmed her." The mention of his mother froze him briefly. Kalu blinked away the sting in his chest. Yes, she did. Inside the mansion, everything remained as his mother left it. Polished floors, antique decorations, soft curtains, and the familiar scent of lavender she loved so much. He walked through the halls slowly, his footsteps echoing like reminders of time he wished he could rewrite. When he reached the balcony overlooking the quiet landscape, he closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of villagers talking, the low hum of nature, it all wrapped around him like healing. For the first time in a long while, he felt his heartbeat steady. "Kalu," he whispered to himself, "you will rest here." Down the hill, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest trace of another presence. A girl, a lonely girl who had just wiped tears from her cheeks. Neither of them knew it yet, but the world that separated them was already bending, preparing the path that would soon bring them face to face. 2 lives, 2 worlds, one destiny drawing closer with every breath. A soft rumble of clouds gathered in the sky that afternoon, the kind that signaled a sudden countryside rain. Harmattan wind swept through the forest edges, rustling dry leaves and bending thin branches. Amara was returning from the forest path, calmer now, though the sting of the market humiliation still clung to her heart. She walked slowly, dragging a toe through the dust as she replayed the morning in her mind. But the wind changed. The sky darkened slightly. Amara paused and looked upward. "Rain?" she whispered. In the village, rainstorms came quickly and without pity. She wrapped her arms around herself, scanning for shelter. The nearest place was not the village, but the edge of the forest, where a narrow path sloped toward the old Obiakor estate. She hesitated. The mansion was far above her status. Beautiful, sacred, untouchable. But the forest had no shelter, and the clouds were already heavy. When the first drop of water hit her forehead, she made her decision. She hurried along the forest side trail, moving toward a small rock overhang near the estate boundary, a place she had once discovered while gathering firewood. It wasn't much, but it could shield her from the rain long enough. Thunder echoed in the distance. Amara reached the overhang just as the rain began to fall, in fine, sharp needles. She crouched beneath the rocky cover, hugging her knees close to her chest. Her yellow gown clung slightly to her skin, damp at the hem. Her braids rested against her back, some strands fluttering in the rushing wind. She thought she was completely alone. She didn't know that just a few meters away, on the private estate driveway, Kalu Obiakor was stepping outside to inspect the grounds before the rain got worse. He had asked his driver to wait by the garage while he walked a bit. The countryside air soothed him, the gentle coldness, the earthy smell, the way the land seemed untouched by city chaos. But then he noticed something unusual, a flicker of yellow fabric moving near the estate's side path. His brows furrowed. "Is someone there?" he murmured, unsure if it was the wind or an actual person. He took a few steps forward, curiosity pushing him. The rain grew heavier, tapping rhythmically against the trees. Through the veil of falling water, he spotted a small figure curled under the rock overhang, barefoot, young, alone. Something in his chest tightened. Not fear, something else, something protective. He motioned for his driver to hold back and approach slowly. Amara heard footsteps crunching lightly against wet leaves. She froze. Panic rushed into her chest. Had she trespassed? Was someone coming to chase her? She swallowed hard and peeked out from behind her arms, and their eyes met. For the briefest second, the world paused. The rain fell in slow motion. The wind held its breath, and two very different lives collided in a single heartbeat. Kalu stood still, equally surprised. Before him was a girl who looked like she had stepped out of a melancholic portrait. Chocolate-skinned, rain-dusted braids, wide, innocent eyes reflecting fear and softness all at once. Her faded yellow gown clung to her shoulders, and she shivered slightly from cold. She looked fragile, vulnerable, but also breathtaking in a way that had nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with purity. Kalu softened his stance so he wouldn't frighten her. "It's raining heavily," he said gently. "Are you all right?" Amara blinked. She had never been spoken to so softly by a stranger, especially a man who looked wealthy and important. I'm fine, sir," she whispered, voice shaky. The rain intensified, splashing onto her feet. She winced as cold water soaked her skin. "You'll catch a cold out here," Kalu said, taking another careful step forward. "There's shelter inside the estate. I can help you." Amara shook her head quickly, fear rising again. "No, sir. I shouldn't. I didn't mean to come here. I only needed to hide from the rain." "It's all right," he replied, voice steady and kind. "You're not in trouble." For a moment, they just looked at each other, a wealthy man shaped by loneliness and an orphan girl shaped by hardship. Two opposite worlds, one unexpected connection. Thunder cracked above them. That was when Kalu extended his hand slightly, not touching her, just offering. "Please," he said softly, "let me help you." Amara stared at the hand, then at his face. Something about him felt safe, strangely safe, different from the villagers who mocked her. Tentatively, she rose from the ground. Rainwater ran down her legs. She stepped out from the overhang with hesitant footsteps. Kalu removed his jacket in a quick, instinctive motion and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth swallowed her instantly. Her eyes widened in shock at such kindness. Kalu gave a faint smile, gentle, honest. "Let's get you inside before the rain gets worse." And though Amara didn't know it yet, That simple gesture would become the first moment her life began to change. Forever. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, leaving the Obiakor estate glistening under a gray, overcast sky. Puddles reflected the grandeur of the mansion, and the air smelled of wet earth and blossoms from the manicured garden. Inside, the warmth of the sitting room wrapped around Amara like a protective cocoon. She sat in the armchair, still wrapped in the soft towel Kalu had given her, sipping the last of the tea. Her chocolate-brown skin glistened faintly from the lingering dampness of her gown, and her braids hung slightly clumped together from the rain. For the first time in years, she felt a small measure of safety. Kalu Obiakor, 29, tall, with his navy blue shirt now partially dried, sat opposite her in a leather armchair, hands clasped loosely over his knees. He studied her quietly, not out of scrutiny, but because he found himself genuinely interested in her. There was something about her presence that tugged at a part of him long ignored, the part that had grown weary of shallow conversations, false smiles, and empty admiration. "Do you want to tell me about yourself?" Kalu asked finally, his voice gentle, inviting. "If you want to, of course." Amara's gaze dropped to the cup in her hands. She hesitated. For someone so kind, this question felt almost dangerous. Dangerous because trust had always been fragile in her world. She swallowed hard and decided to take a small risk. "My parents died when I was 9, she said quietly. "I don't have anyone left. I stay here in the village, and I do small jobs for people." Her voice trembled slightly. "Most of them don't like me. Not important to anyone." The words hung in the room. Kalu listened, silent but present, letting her vulnerability fill the space without judgment. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "That must have been very hard." Amara's eyes lifted briefly, meeting his gaze. There was no pity there, only something warmer, a gentle acknowledgement of her pain. That alone made her heart skip. "What about you?" she asked hesitantly, curiosity flickering in her dark eyes. "You seem so different from everyone I know. Are you always like this?" Kalu's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Different?" he repeated, thoughtful. "Perhaps. I've had a lot of things, wealth, influence, but I've never had someone I could be truly myself with. People see what I have, not who I am." Amara's gaze softened. She had never imagined a world where a person could be so lonely despite having everything. "It must be very hard," she whispered. "It is," he admitted, "which is why I don't usually let anyone close. But you," he added quietly, almost to himself, "you feel different." Her breath caught at his words. She didn't understand why a man like Kalu would even notice her, let alone feel something genuine for her presence. It was dizzying and strangely comforting all at once. The conversation continued in small bursts, hesitant questions, soft laughter at shared trivial observations, and long moments of quiet where they simply watched the rain streak the windows. Amara told him about her days gathering firewood, running errands, and the small, quiet joys she found in fleeting moments of peace. Kalu shared carefully measured stories from his childhood, the rare moments when his mother's love had softened the hardness of his upbringing, and his struggles with the world of wealth and expectation. With every word, every glance, the distance between them shrank. The mansion, which had felt intimidating and foreign to Amara, now seemed like a sanctuary, and Kalu, who had wandered through life surrounded by people yet profoundly alone, felt a stirring he hadn't felt in years, a desire to protect, to nurture, and to simply be near someone who saw him for more than his wealth. Hours passed unnoticed. The rain had stopped completely, leaving silver droplets shimmering on the estate's garden leaves. Amara finally rose from the armchair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and lightness, a strange new sensation. "I should go back," she murmured. "I shouldn't take up more of your time." Kalu stood as well, watching her. "You're welcome here anytime," he said softly. "Tomorrow or whenever you need. This place, it's yours if you want it to be." Amara's lips curved in a small, hesitant smile, and she felt warmth spread through her chest, melting away the usual fear and loneliness she carried. "Thank you, Kalu," she whispered, feeling that perhaps for the first time someone truly saw her. As she stepped toward the doorway, she paused, glancing back once more. In that brief look, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Something fragile and precious had begun, something neither wealth nor poverty could define. And in that quiet mansion, amid the fading echoes of rain, two lives had begun to intertwine. Two worlds, once separated by circumstance and fear, were now on a path toward one another, a path that would change everything. The following morning, the Obiaker estate was bathed in soft sunlight. Dew still clung to the manicured garden leaves, and the faint scent of wet earth lingered in the air. Inside, the warmth of the mansion contrasted sharply with the cool morning outside. Amara awoke early, her heart still fluttering from the kindness Kalu had shown her the day before. She had spent the night on a small cot set up in a guest room near the sitting area. The towel he had given her now hung neatly on a chair, and her gown had dried almost completely. She smoothed down her damp braids, taking a deep breath. Today, she thought, she would be brave enough to speak more freely. Downstairs, Kalu was already awake. He moved quietly through the halls, dressed in a crisp white casual shirt and dark trousers. His steps were light, but his presence filled the mansion with quiet authority. The events of yesterday lingered in his mind. The way Amara had looked at him, the way she had trusted him enough to enter his home. It was unusual for him to feel drawn to anyone in this way, yet he could not ignore the tug of curiosity and care he felt toward her. When Amara arrived at the sitting room for breakfast, Kalu was already preparing a small tray of tea and fruits. She paused at the doorway, startled by the calm intimacy of the space and the unexpected thoughtfulness of his actions. "Good morning," he said softly, offering a gentle smile. "I hope you slept well." Amara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, thank you." She stepped closer, eyes sweeping the room. The sitting room, warmed by the fireplace and sunlight filtering through the windows, seemed less intimidating now. Kalu gestured toward the tray. "Please, sit, eat something. You need strength for the day." Amara hesitated, then took a seat. The simplicity of the gesture, the way he cared without imposing, made her heart ache with warmth she had never known. She picked up a piece of fruit, and their fingers brushed lightly. Neither pulled away immediately. A quiet awareness passed between them, unspoken yet undeniable. You don't often have visitors, do you?" Amara asked softly, breaking the silence. Her dark eyes studied him with gentle curiosity. Kalu shook his head, a small smile forming. "No, not really. People see what I have, not who I am. But you're different." Her cheeks flushed faintly. She looked down at her hands, trying to hide the growing awareness of how unusual it felt to have someone look at her like that. Like she mattered. I'm not used to kindness like yours," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. He leaned back, watching her with thoughtful eyes. "Then let me show you more," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have to go through life feeling unseen." For the next few hours, conversation flowed easily. Amara shared small details about her childhood, her hopes, and her quiet dreams of a life beyond the village. Kalu listened intently, asking gentle questions, laughing lightly at her timid jokes, and occasionally letting his gaze linger on her face a second longer than necessary. There was a subtle tension in the air, a quiet electricity neither dared to name. Yet both felt. When lunch approached, Kalu insisted she stay a little longer. The weather might turn again, he said, but his eyes betrayed another reason. He simply did not want her to leave. Amara nodded, grateful, and felt a warmth spreading through her chest she could not quite define. By mid-afternoon, the sunlight shifted, casting golden streaks across the room. Amara and Kalu sat side by side now, engaged in light conversation about trivial things, the plants in the garden, the soft chirping of birds, and the changing clouds outside. Their shoulders occasionally brushed, and each touch sent a small thrill through her. Kalu noticed it too, though he maintained his calm demeanor, careful not to overwhelm her. As the day drew to a close, Kalu walked Amara toward the door. "You're welcome here any time," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I enjoy your company." Amara's heart beat faster. She stepped back, still uncertain of the feelings stirring within her, yet she managed a small, shy smile. "I enjoy being here too," she whispered. The sun set behind the estate, casting long shadows over the mansion and the garden. Inside, the warmth lingered, a subtle promise that this day was only the beginning. Two lives, once so separate, were now inching closer, drawn together by kindness, curiosity, and a quiet, unspoken attraction neither fully understood. And for the first time, both felt the undeniable spark that would shape their destiny. The days that followed were filled with small, quiet routines. Amara found herself returning to the Obiakor estate almost every morning. Sometimes it was to fetch a forgotten item, other times simply to enjoy the warmth of the sitting room or the gentle company of Kalu. Each visit drew her closer to him, and each moment he spent with her seemed to chip away at the invisible walls he had built around his heart. One bright morning, the sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting golden patterns across the polished floors. Amara sat on the soft armchair in the sitting room, her braids now neatly tied back, wearing a simple, pale yellow dress she had brought to replace the rain-soaked gown. Kalu, dressed in a light blue casual shirt and dark trousers, sat opposite her, reviewing some documents on a sleek desk. Yet despite the work, his gaze occasionally flicked toward her, warm and unobtrusive. Amara's curiosity had grown. The mansion, the lifestyle, and Kalu himself all held mysteries she longed to understand. She had observed the subtle movements, the way he sighed softly when reading letters, the way his eyes darkened at certain phone calls, the faint, almost imperceptible tension in his posture when alone in the quiet rooms. She felt drawn not only to his kindness, but to the secrets he carried. "Why do you keep all these things?" she asked gently, nodding toward the documents, the phone, and the desk filled with papers. Her voice was soft, respectful, but laced with curiosity. Kalu looked up, surprised by her attentiveness. He studied her for a moment, noting her genuine interest, the way her dark eyes sparkled with intelligence and compassion. "These are just responsibilities," he said finally, voice calm. "Things I cannot ignore. People rely on them, on me." Amara nodded slowly, sensing the weight behind his words. "It must be exhausting," she murmured. "It can be," he admitted, leaning back slightly. "But some things are worth carrying. Some things are worth protecting." His gaze softened, lingering on her face. There was something unspoken in the way he said it, a subtle invitation to understand him, not just the surface of wealth and power, but the man beneath. Encouraged, Amara took a careful step forward, curiosity overtaking her natural shyness. "Do you ever feel lonely?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kalu's eyes darkened slightly, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his otherwise composed face. He looked away for a brief moment before meeting her gaze again. "Yes, sometimes," he said softly. "I have everything I need, yet I am often without anyone to truly see me." Amara's chest tightened. She had never met anyone so candidly honest about the emptiness that could exist even in a life of abundance. She felt a mix of empathy and something deeper, a stirring in her heart she did not yet fully understand. I think I understand," she replied quietly. "Being around people who care only about what you have, it can be lonely." Kalu's lips curved into the faintest smile, a subtle warmth in his eyes. "Exactly," he said softly. "And yet here you are. You make the quiet feel different." Amara felt a flush of warmth creeping over her cheeks. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. A small smile tugged at her lips. "I like being here," she admitted, voice soft but honest. They sat in silence for a moment, a gentle electricity filling the space between them. The sunlight danced across the polished floors, and for a fleeting moment the outside world ceased to exist. Their attention was solely on each other, on the fragile connection slowly deepening. As the day unfolded, Amara's curiosity could not be contained. She began asking small questions about Kalu's life, where he had grown up, what had shaped him, and what dreams he had harbored before the weight of the estate claimed his every day. Kalu answered selectively, revealing pieces of his past carefully, yet each answer only drew her closer. The unspoken tension between them grew, subtle but undeniable, a pull neither of them could name, but both felt acutely. By late afternoon, the golden sun slanted through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the sitting room. Amara rose to leave, though neither truly wanted the day to end. Kalu walked her toward the door, and as she paused, a small, shy smile crossed her lips. You've told me some things today, she said softly. I feel like I'm beginning to know you. And you're beginning to understand why I rarely let anyone close, he replied, voice low, but sincere. But you're different, Amara. Her heart skipped. The sincerity in his tone, the warmth in his gaze, and the subtle brush of his hand as he guided her to the doorway left her breathless. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel a dangerous, thrilling sense of attachment, not just to the mansion or the safety, but to the man who had shown her kindness and a window into a world she had never known. As she stepped outside, she glanced back once more. Kalu stood in the soft glow of the sitting room, watching her with a gentle intensity. Something unspoken passed between them, a silent promise, a shared understanding, and the first threads of a connection that neither wealth nor circumstance could sever. And in that moment, both knew that their lives were beginning to intertwine in ways neither had anticipated, weaving a fragile, beautiful bond, one that would soon blossom into something far more powerful than either could yet imagine. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the tall windows of the Obiakor estate, casting warm streaks across the marble floor. Amara stood on the balcony, her braids softly brushing her shoulders as a calm breeze lifted them. For the first time in her life, she felt peace settling in her chest, not fear, not uncertainty, but something new, something warm. Kalu joined her quietly, hands in his pockets, navy shirt sleeves rolled up. He watched her for a moment, studying the serenity on her face. "You're thinking again," he said softly. Amara turned, her chocolate brown skin glowing in the early light. "I'm thinking about how everything changed, how you changed everything." He stepped closer. "You changed me first." She didn't look away this time. She held his gaze steadily, her heart no longer running from what she felt. A loud knock suddenly echoed from downstairs. Kalu frowned slightly. "Stay here," he said, brushing her hand lightly before heading down. Amara remained on the balcony, but her chest tightened. Something felt different. Moments later, she heard voices rising from the living room. She hurried downstairs, stopping at the last stair. Kalu stood facing two men, one dressed in police uniform, the other in plain clothes. The officer spoke with calm authority. "Mr. Obiakor, we have concluded the investigation. The allegations your step-family made, they were false, every one of them. And the threats they made against the girl," he paused looking at Amara, "have been documented. They will face charges." Amara gasped softly. Kalu's jaw tightened. "Good, she will never be hurt again." The officers nodded and left. When the door closed, Amara's legs felt weak. Kalu rushed to her immediately. "It's over," he whispered. "No one will take you. No one will touch you. You're safe." Amara buried her face against his chest, finally letting the weight she had been carrying collapse. Safe. The word felt like a new world. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner and a walk through the garden, Kalu stopped under the mango tree where Amara had first cried the night she arrived. "Amara," he said, voice deeper, steady, sincere. She turned, her heart fluttering in her chest. "I want you here," he continued, "not as someone I rescued, not as someone who needs me, but as someone He paused, vulnerable for the first time, Someone I can't imagine living without. Amara's breath hitched. Kalu, he stepped closer. I fell for you, slowly, completely, quietly, and now loudly enough that I can't hide it anymore. Tears shimmered in her eyes, soft, grateful, overwhelmed. Kalu, she whispered, you have given me a home, safety, peace. But what I cherish most is the way you see me, like I matter. You do matter, he replied, brushing her cheek gently. More than you know. Her voice trembled. I love you. Kalu inhaled sharply, emotion flickering in his eyes. He cupped her face and pressed his forehead to hers. And I love you, Amara Nenena. More than anything I own. More than anything I've built. Weeks passed, and everything changed. Amara enrolled in school, her first real chance at education. Kalu made sure she had tutors, books, and a future big enough to erase her past. But nothing made her smile more than the evenings they spent together, chatting, laughing, brushing mango leaves off each other, teasing, learning each other's worlds. One evening, as the sky burned orange and gold, Kalu stood in front of her on the balcony. He took her hand. Amara, he began softly, I don't want to just give you a future. I want to walk into it with you. Amara's eyes widened as he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, silver with a delicate glint, nothing overly flashy, perfectly fitting for a girl who valued sincerity over wealth. He dropped to one knee. Will you build that future with me? Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Kalu. 1,000 times yes. He stood and wrapped his arms around her as the sunset painted the sky with colors that felt like blessings. In that moment, the orphan girl with nothing and the billionaire with everything finally had the one thing they both needed, each other. A story of rescue became a story of healing. A story of kindness became a story of love. And together, they stepped into a new life. Not because he was a billionaire, but because she was the missing piece of his heart. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more captivating love stories. Your support helps the channel grow and motivates more beautiful stories. Thank you for watching.